First of all, welcome, Seamus. It's a good while ago since we crossed paths on the Peatlands Council. First thing is, I think it needs to be put on the record, you know, you've said that some of them didn't cooperate. In fairness to the industry, they would have sent emails to every one of us and would be totally contradicting that. Growing Media Ireland have said that they've engaged and that some of them were and also smaller operators. Look at, I'm not getting into it one way or the other, but it's about resolving the issue. They're also concerned that there's 10 months gone and it's basically another year and nothing has happened. I'm not saying that's your fault. You talked about, I know the place you're talking about in Rochford Bridge because I actually worked in it years ago near it. It's ironic that for taking out gravel, you can doze the bog out of the way and then you use 22 RBs and it washes the sand, because I actually worked around there for a while. But you can doze that bog out of the way, but someone cannot up to now use it for, if someone wanted to go into that same bog and use it for milling peat, we'll say they cannot do it. Yeah, you're correct in saying there's large amounts dozed to one place that would maybe help in the mushroom industry. I don't know what area they need for that, but for the horticulture, I think they need something like, is it 14 or 1500 hectares is what they were talking about around the country. So that'd be 50 of these 30 hectare. Seamus, as I met you on the bog thing, and right around the country, there's Lidor done. We'd have worked with the national parks in fairness to them, and every bog, as you say, is different, and there's different surfaces under it. And the hydrology and the ecology of bogs, depending on the amount of lock or sand or the type of whatever is under it, can determine an awful lot. And the upwelling and all that, you have to do all them things. But I think the nub of this is that people were led to believe that if there was under 30 hectares, that under 30 hectares has to be hydrologically separated from everything else, to put it simple. And even if it was separated by a drain, you'd have to be able to show that there was no upwelling from one part or the other. But what I cannot understand in all of this is how we cannot put in the 30 hectares right around the country. And we have done I've seen the science done, and you will show that depending on the bog, the most you will go is between 150 and 250 metres outside that, where you may have any effect. And I'm talking about SACs now, which is a fairly higher standard than what we're talking about here, because these aren't designated bogs. And what I can't understand is that, first of all, the bogs, and there is a lot of them that would have the drain around them that'd be down to the lock or the marl, whatever you want to call it. But on top of that, I cannot understand how a directive isn't being given or a recommendation being given that if you have a 30 hectare site and you put your buffer zone around it, because there's an idea out there at the moment that and it was given by certain people years and years ago. You'd remember, Seamus, we heard that a bog was like a plastic bag, that if you punched it in one spot, that it was all going to run out, the water was going to run out. The science has been done in that, in the line of RPS has done science on that, and people from Queen's University in Belfast has done it, and it was peer reviewed, and it has shown that between 150 and 250, and that's dependent on the white, brown and black turf that's in a bog. You understand what I'm on about here. And why a recommendation couldn't be given that if you showed that you had your buffer zone around it, that you had your 30 hectares, that then it would be, and basically you have to do a certain amount of science to show all this, that a directive wouldn't be given to councils to basically allow for that within, especially within the areas that's been milled already, because the areas that's been milled already around the country, like, it's simple as this, they're private property. There's no one being able to force them to put them back or re-wet it or do anything. And it's thicker people will get if you go against them. So you have to work with them and try and resolve the issue. And I am wondering why something like that wasn't looked at in the recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Deputy Fitzmaurice. I appreciate. Yes, we do go back, and we might. I'm pretty sure you know your bogs better than I ever will, but I do know them, and I know exactly the issues you raise. You know, there is as I said, these are solutions, and maybe a combination of them will work. The reason we couldn't put forward the recommendation you talk about was having also talked to scientists and hydrologists particularly. And remember, the heartbeat decision is something to be looked at. It needs to be clarified. It may even need to be tested, but at the moment it's there. And what we were told was, yes, you can put your buffer zone around, as you suggest. Now, I'm not dismissing this as a possibility, but we were told in no uncertain terms to stand over a recommendation like that, you would need to be absolutely certain that the underground water systems that could be affected in such a plot will not be disturbed or affected, because you could actually, as one scientist pointed out, you could actually dry up the water schemes in an area if you weren't careful. So how that buffer zone could be managed, nobody presented us any proposal, and we looked for it as to how that buffer zone would guarantee that the water systems that could be affected would not be damaged and would not effectively destroy water in the general area. That was the main reason. We and I personally could not stand over that because I wasn't convinced that such a buffer zone would do that.
Well, Seamus, I would just put it to you that obviously, say the reports that was done in the national parks that RPS done for them was out there, it was peer reviewed. Hydrologist from Queen's University has done all this. This isn't about damaging water in any area. The scientists or whoever you were talking to could well do with looking at, this has been done in 14 different places around the country. This isn't a one-off or, and second of all, the hydrology of a raised bog, it's the upwelling you have to watch, not draining a well down the road or up the road. It's the upwelling you watch and the type of soil that's under it. The one thing I would put to you about, and I think, and I'm no expert in horticulture, I've learned a good bit about it, but in the line of the stuff that's in Rochford Bridge, when it's dozed over by machinery, my understanding that if you're doing that type of stuff, you need a minimum of 3 meters, and there's a danger of contamination. Am I right in saying that, yes, there is a danger of contamination, that it would knock that out? But like, I'm not inventing something new here. This is what I'm saying, that when we're doing a report, I would be saying that we need to go to nearly every door, and I'm saying, and even for these people, it takes a lot of, you know, to do hydrology and ecology and all that in the bog is a lot of work. There's no point in saying it's not. But my honest opinion is that someone has to make a call, and I'm not saying it's you. You can do a report or whatever, but a minister has to make a call that, and through a legislative process, in my opinion, that providing that you that you show that within a buffer zone that you're not damaging the whole integrity of a site, and that's copying the Habitats Directive, that you're not going to have what they call an adverse effect on a site. There's an area that you can show, and it's generally degraded. It's always degraded where they were mill and peat before, to put it simple. And generally in these areas, they're bigger than the 30 hectares, a lot of them at the moment, that your buffer zone will already be there no matter what you do, and that it should have been, in my opinion, and you cannot do it, but a minister needs to make a decision that with the buffer zone, and you have your 30 hectares, and you'll show hydrologically and ecologically that you won't damage the bog up or down the way. I think it's a solution, and it should be exempted then in the due process once you show that. And I think that's the way forward for everyone. That's coming from someone that's looking at bogs all their life.
Mr. Boland?
Yes, and Deputy Fitzmaurice, you are an authority on bogs, and I would never in any way say you're not, because you know and you've worked them, and I know that for a fact. And all I can say is, I would say in what you are proposing, there is merit. The problem I had and the problem I came across was twofold. One, there were, unfortunately, for your point of view, enough people to say, well, they don't believe that the buffer zone has been designed yet to do that. That could be wrong, Deputy Fitzmaurice, that could be wrong, but unfortunately, for me to stand over a recommendation knowing that that was said was simply impossible. The second point, there were I suppose, people who knew we were doing this survey, and they made it very clear that they would be very worried about their areas if such a bog was used in that way. So, Deputy, I don't in any way dismiss, because I would have huge respect for your knowledge, and indeed I'm sure I would suggest that this particular recommendation that we're talking about, especially one, could be followed up with that view in mind. But I think at the moment I didn't have enough evidence to say conclusively to stand over it. And given that I couldn't get anybody else to do it either, I had to walk a bit back from it.